Football school? Basketball school? How about everything school? Locked On Illini. Let's go.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Illini. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day. A simple reminder, if you'd like to support the channel, find us on your favorite audio platform. Find us right here on YouTube. Any of the social medias, just make sure you give us a follow and certainly hit that subscribe button or like button wherever you're viewing this from. My name is Sunny Verma. You can find me at IlliniCast, or you can find me at the Sunny V on X. I'm also on, as I mentioned, all the other socials. Do a quick search for Locked On Illini. Send me a message, say hello, give me feedback. Just know that it'll be me responding. I wanted to have a little fun with today's episode. We've got good news when it comes to football. We've had good news when it comes to basketball. We've even had good news when it comes to the women's basketball department. And really, it all comes down to this. On Monday, the AP rankings came out, and Illinois basketball is ranked at number 25. Illinois football is ranked at number 24. And the Illini women's basketball team clocks in at number 22. That's right. Our women's basketball team's ranked, our men's basketball team's ranked, and our football team, all three are ranked in the top 25 in the AP, something that hasn't been done since 2001. It's been a long time coming. I'm going to gloss over a tweet of Jonathan Kuhn, one of my favorite follows on Twitter. Please find him. Again, it's Jonathan Kuhn 1. I'll have the tweet in the description of this video. But basically, he talks about how rare of a feat this is. And he essentially says that since the first women's basketball AP poll was released in 1976, a little over 2,500 weeks have passed, of which during only 2 of them have Illini fans been able to enjoy football, men's, and women's basketball all being ranked at the same time. And this is the first time it has ever happened during the regular season for all 3 programs. This in itself is a reason to celebrate, right? For a program like, look, my wife, she's a Buckeye. She graduated from Ohio State, and I'm not going to lie, sometimes you kind of peer over and look at the type of NIL that they have and the type of athletic success that they have, mainly on the football field, but they've gone to deep runs in the NCAA tournament as well. You kind of sometimes look over there and be like, oh, it would be nice to have that. Folks, we do have that with Illinois. And again, all credit goes to the guy who might eventually go down as the most important figure in Illini athletics history. And that, of course, is Josh Whitman. Josh has basically turned around all 3 programs. He hasn't been perfect. He's had to make some firings. He's made some hirings that didn't work out. But he's also made some hirings now that, again, we're in a spot that we haven't been in a very, very long time. And even when we have, it's been on a very rare occasion. But it's not just that. This is not one of those situations where it's a fluke, that we're lucky that one of these programs just happens to have a week in the top 25 and the other ones are more consistent. Honestly, it's quite the opposite. Between Shauna Green, between Brad Underwood, and between Brett Bielema, I genuinely think that this could be happening more often in the near future than not. It's not like any of our coaches are old. Brett and Brad have, I would guess, at least 5+ years left in their coaching career. Shauna Green's just in the middle of hers. She's hopefully got a decade plus down here in Champaign. We have 3 coaches who know exactly how to build a program. They're not taking any shortcuts. They're doing things the right way. They're taking care of things off the field and taking care of things on it. And it shows now with 3 top 25 teams ranked. A feat that only Alabama and I believe Iowa State are able to replicate. I believe those are the two other schools. Feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about that. How fortunate are we that Josh Whitman is an alum? He's the type of guy who would be on the top of the list of any school worth anything in university athletics. And I'm talking about the big dogs, a Texas A&M, the Ohio States, the schools that, let's be honest, probably focus more on the athletic side than they necessarily do the academics. Here at Illinois, and half of you will like this and half of you won't, the university certainly does put a fair amount of weight on the academic side. They don't just necessarily look the other way in order for athletics to succeed. Academics, and some will say they're glad, plays a big part of our university, including when it comes to our student athletes. In other schools, in particular down south, that's not necessarily the case. There's schools down there with millions and billions, if not, of endowment who can probably come up with a big money offer and try to lure Josh Whitman away. But I think Josh's love for his university, and we've seen the results. I don't think there's another AD job that Josh would ever even think of leaving us for. Does he have plans beyond the University of Illinois? I would think so. He's a rising star in the industry. He's the type of guy who could one day become the commish of the Big Ten, or just take on a really big role in college athletics on basically shaping the future. And at that point, he might be ready to move on to a bigger challenge outside the University of Illinois athletics. But I promise, and I'll tell you one thing that I absolutely guarantee, he'll only do that when he's comfortable that Illinois, as is going to be in much better shape than when he took over. We've had some really bad ADs. Some of these ADs have been the reason that our basketball team has been down for a decade. An historically great basketball program struggled for almost a decade straight. Football-wise, we've never been much to talk about. I've mentioned this before. Our women's basketball team was arguably the worst in Power 5. Josh has turned all that around. Josh understands how important and the NIL aspect of college sports is right now. He's got a great relationship with a lot of the donors, a lot of the bigger donors. He knows that in order for us to stay afloat, we're going to need brand new facilities. And he's been in charge of that, including the Smith Center. He knows ultimately what needs to be done and who he needs to talk to get those things done. And while hopefully we're still early in his tenure as Illinois AD, days like Monday do prove that Josh has the University of Illinois, which we've always been great academically, but also catching up on the athletic side. Listen up, Locked On Illini fans. You need to download the Roy app. You have heard us talk about Roy this season and how they're revolutionizing the NIL industry. Roy allows you, the fan, to have a say in who gets the NIL money. And that's what I absolutely love about Roy. You get your money back if that player transfers. Roy is helping us keep our team intact, and it's actually good for the game long term. This week, I had to pick Pat Bryant. A senior on senior night having his best game of his career. This was honestly an easy decision. There were other candidates who themselves had fantastic games, but I really did want to award Pat Bryant. You can show your support for Pat by depositing a little appreciation onto that player's account. To do that, download the Roy app. You can see what the logo looks like if you're watching on YouTube, or go to joinroy.com. Now, let's spotlight the Roy Locked On Player of the Week, Pat Bryant. We're going to throw some money into his account on Roy. Every contribution counts, 10, 20. It all adds up and is going to help your favorite players stay put. Join me and show some love for Pat Bryant. Download the Roy app or go to joinroy.com today. Use promo code LOCKEDON, Every athlete from every team is there. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Go to joinroy.com for full terms. Roy, support the players. Change the game. All right, it's Tuesday, and you know what Tuesday brings? Tuesday brings Big Ten Ted onto Locked On Illini. Ted, thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, it's always good to be here. Always good to be here. Illinois coming off a W this past weekend. The bounce back it's really starting to look like Illinois could possibly, record-wise at least, might be kind of that best of the non-playoff teams kind of. And I'm sure we'll get into more talk about the Illini and exactly what they look like, but pretty good looking win against Michigan State this past weekend.
Yeah, nice 3-possession victory over another Big Ten team. You know, that's not something us Illinois fans really get to say very often. And, you know, as you mentioned, you know, if Big Ten sends 4 guys to the college football playoff, Illinois has a really good chance of getting one of those nice New Year's Eve Day bowls in Florida, whether it's the ReliaQuest Bowl or the Citrus, which, again, if you had told us that, you know, in the off season, we would have thought you were crazy. But, you know, there seems to be a logjam of teams that, you know, could essentially end up at 8-4. Illinois controls their own destiny and has the potential to be 9-3. And I can't even, me saying that doesn't even make sense. But again, you know, it's just I talked about this on yesterday's episode of Locked On Illini. It was nice seeing Illinois just take care of business.
Yep.
Right. You know, we talked about it last week. Illinois has struggled once the calendar turns to November. And so there was a lot of uneasiness when it comes to the fan base. I really feel like this victory the fan base was more worried than the players and the coaching staff might have been. But the way that they showed up, and again, you know, they locked up Michigan State's running game. They didn't cause any turnovers against Childs, but still, the game was never really so much in doubt, and that's all you can ask for, right? Just beat the teams you're clearly better than. And I 5 minutes into this game, I could tell Illinois is probably the better team here, but you still never know in the game of football.
Illinois is just such a sound, balanced team, and they're not a sexy team. They're not going to blow you away. They're a Brett Bielema football team. You know, the more I watch them, the more I kind of think that they're not going to capture any headlines. They're not going to, you know, stand out super big in any kind of way. But you mentioned stopping the run game. You know, the defense was solid. They had 5 sacks in this game. You kind of look at Luke Altmaier, just a 19 of 32, 231, and a couple of scores, did not turn the football over. And this was kind of a crazy stat that I kind of noticed and dug up. Outside of those 2 interceptions against Oregon, the rest of the season, he's only thrown 1 interception. He's played extremely clean football this season. And that's just like I said, that goes back to that just sound, fundamental, not sexy, don't turn the football over, don't beat yourself kind of football right now. Just, you know, McCray 9 for 61, Lawfrey 10 for 37 as a team, 138, 4.5 yards a carry. Of course, Pat Bryant 4 catches, 135 in this game, and that was big. But it just, you know, it's kind of, you're watching this game and it's kind of that methodical where they keep on doing their thing, and all of a sudden you look up at the scoreboard at the end of this deal, and it's 38-16 Illinois, and a convincing win in a spot that might have been a little bit spooky. Of course, when we talked last week, we talked about that game a couple of years back when Michigan State got the win, and there were many other factors, but, you know, that cost Illinois a shot to go to the Big Ten championship that season. This year, they're just old TCB. They're taking care of business right now, and their schedule is very favorable to sit there at 9-3. And like we talked about, kind of be that best out of the rest of these teams. So solid defense, clean football, Luke Altmaier doing his thing. It's a recipe for Illinois success right now.
Yeah, I don't know if I was like trying to introduce a casual friend to college football if I necessarily put an Illinois game on TV. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. I love this team because I'm an alum, and, you know, I've been watching them for a decade plus, and they're my school. But, you know, they're not a great football team, but I think they're better than average. I think they're probably solidly in the good category. They don't necessarily do anything great, but as you mentioned, you know, every single unit on that team just plays to its level. Like, again, the talent isn't necessarily there. I've talked about this before, being the number 18th ranked when it comes to the talent aggregator from 24/7. I forget what exactly that they call it, but they're just really well coached. And I do this after every single football game. I reach out to, the opposing team's content creator, whoever I had on the show to preview. And I'm like, hey, do you have a couple thoughts on what you saw of Illinois? And every single time, the consistent answer I always get is, your guys are really well coached.
Yep.
They know where to be. They know, who they're supposed to be guarding. If our defensive backs may not be all that talented when it comes to the 4-star or 5-star ratings, but he's like, this is what Matt had said. Once they get their hands on you, you're going down. Like, they understand the technique and they take care of business on that front. So, yeah, I mean, it's just one of those where if we end up 9-3, what an incredible season that turns out to be. But quite honestly, even if we end the season at 8-4, we need to take a step back and just really appreciate the job that Brett Bielema has done. Honestly, and, I'd have to review year by year, but this could be his best coaching job ever.
Yeah, and I feel like I said that earlier in the season. I can't exactly remember when I said it, but I do remember saying that I think that this is the best coaching job that Brett Bielema has done. Look at those teams that he coached at Wisconsin. There was a lot of talent there. There was a lot of guys that were playing in the NFL, whether it's running backs, offensive linemen, guys on defense, whoever it was. Those were very talented teams, and I know one winning Big Ten championships 3 straight, but if Illinois, and here's the thing about that 2022 team that we referenced before, and when you talk about that team, you talk about NFL guys. You look at what Chase Brown is doing. You look at what some of those guys on defense, the Devin Witherspoons, the Sidney Browns. You look at some of the talent certainly on that team, and then you look at this team, and it's not as talented as that 2022 squad. I think that's fair to say. But this is a team that could finish with a better record, certainly this season. And you can debate about competition on the schedules. Of course, a lot of people have been doing that at the playoff level. Certainly, you could do that between 2 Illinois football teams right now. So Brett Bielema is just he's just a great coach. He's just a great coach. And it makes you wonder. You talk about the talent aggregate there for 24/7 Sports. It makes you wonder if Illinois could really stack classes and really could bring in a good amount of talent. Just how many consecutive years could they win 9 games? Could they win 10 games? Just how high could that ceiling get in Champaign?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. It's one of those where he's not necessarily recruiting all that great, but Brett wasn't a great recruiter at Wisconsin either. Like he looks for certain traits, physical traits, and he trusts himself that he hires the right coaches to, coach these players to their max abilities. Now, would we like to have a couple extra 4 and 5 star? I'm not even entertaining the conversation about a 5-star. It's been a long time, but even if we can get a 3 or 4 more 4-stars in, like you said, like that just elevates the ceiling of this program, which already compared to the talent that they have on the field, they're doing a fantastic job of. But Ted, besides Illinois and Michigan State, what other games were notable from this past weekend?
Yeah, so when we dive into it, I think the first one that we got to break down is Oregon squeaking by Wisconsin. Wisconsin played their best defensive game, I believe, of the season. Now, a lot of people are going to say Oregon playing their 8th straight game. No Marcus Harper on the offensive line. No Tez Johnson at wide receiver. They're going to stack up all of these things, but what do we know about Oregon? They got depth upon depth upon depth. I think you got to give credit where credit is due. You got to give credit to this, to the Wisconsin defense and the game plan and the formula that they really tossed out there. Like Oregon was batting with a similar lineup that they did against Maryland last week, and they ended up putting together a lot of points, and they didn't do that against Wisconsin. Wisconsin's defense did everything in their power to pull off this upset. They lacked an offense, and it was the last, of course, game coordinated by Phil Longo, who has since been fired as the offensive coordinator there. It's just, man, it makes for Wisconsin fans, and I can certainly say I am one growing up in that state. It makes you want to pull your hair out, knowing that, just one more maybe field goal, but definitely a touchdown you would have been able to upset the number 1 team in the country. Braden Locke just ain't it. I think last year, being a freshman last year, there was a little bit of wiggle room. Yeah, okay, he's not making throws. He's not, being efficient. He's not doing all those things that a quarterback should be doing. But then you fast forward to this year, you have a lot of the same issues. You've seen Braden Locke be good in spurts, but certainly the consistency is not there for Wisconsin. And now the Badgers sit there at 5-5. Okay, same spot as they were last year, where they got to beat one of Nebraska and Minnesota to go to a bowl game. And speaking of Nebraska, they have now lost 5 consecutive games after losing to the USC Trojans 28-20. This was a battle of chains. We know Holgerson coming in to coordinate the offense for Nebraska, Jade Maava coming in at quarterback for USC. So this was kind of a back and forth type of football game. I thought Jade Maava played pretty well in his first start, all things considered, there for USC. And Nebraska, they got 2 games left against Wisconsin and Iowa. I got a hunch that, it could break both ways, where both Nebraska and Wisconsin could go bowling. It certainly could break that way. My gut's telling me one of them is going to lose out. And it might be the loser of that Wisconsin-Nebraska game here coming up this week. I don't know. My gut is just telling me one of them will not go bowling, and one of them is going to have some serious questions. If it's Nebraska, 7 consecutive losses to end the season. Oof, imagine the heat that is going to be talked about within Husker circles starting in December. Ohio State got off to a little bit of a slow start. 31 unanswered points. That'll certainly do the job over there at Wrigley Field. And last thing, a team that we're going to be talking about, I'm sure, here in just a little bit. How about Rutgers? A 31-17 win over Maryland to lock up bowl eligibility right now. This is a team that's starting to play pretty well. And this is a team that maybe, if they can, know they got Illinois coming up here, and that's certainly going to be a challenging game, but 8-4 could be on the table for the Scarlet Knights.
Yeah, before we get to next week's games, I did want to ask you a question. With the Wisconsin letting go of Longo, how would you just describe that whole experience? Wrap it up in a couple sentences, 30, 45 seconds, what this whole experience was like.
You call it an experience. I think it's more of an experiment, right? With the dairy raid, with the air raid, try to spread it out type of offense. At Wisconsin, you look at Wisconsin when they've been successful offensively. Under Phil Longo, what has happened? They've had success running the ball. What was that? The early second half drive, they were ahead 10-6. They got a field goal instead of a touchdown because it got called back. They didn't throw the ball. They were just jamming it down Oregon's throat. 4 yards here, 5 yards, 10 yards, 6 yards. It was old school Badger football. Somewhere Barry Alvarez was a happy guy, certainly watching that drive. And that's when we've watched Wisconsin, when they've had success under Phil, it's been when they've looked like old school Wisconsin. They got 2 really good running backs. I think their next offensive coordinator, they need to prioritize the guy that's run first. But, in the end, it was more of an experiment, I think, with Phil, and a failed experiment. A lot of swings and misses.
All right, let's talk about next week's games right after this. We just got finished talking about Ohio State's victory over Northwestern. Illinois will be playing Northwestern in about 2 weeks at Wrigley Field. I'll be returning home later on this week, and my plans and intentions are to make it to Wrigley. And when I'm looking for tickets, I'm going to be using the Game Time app. Why? Because they give me all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views. I can get a panoramic view from my seat in the app before I buy. And then, of course, the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit me 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to crawl through a bed of hot coals just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy, no hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them on it. True story. Once I moved down to Texas from Illinois, I decided to try a different phone service. Mint Mobile is a sponsor of the show. Give them a shout. And I can tell you, I have zero regrets. Turns out it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. The longest part of the process was the time I spent on hold waiting to break up with my old provider. To get started, go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. There, you'll see that right now, all 3 months are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. Find out how easy it is to switch to Mint Mobile and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. That's mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 GB on unlimited plan. Additional taxes and fees and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. All right, Ted, you referenced them in the previous segment. Illinois has the potential to finish the season at 9-3, but Rutgers themselves have clinched a bowl game and seem to be on the up and up. Saturday, what do you think? Illinois versus Rutgers. What are you going to be looking for?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. As I'm looking at it right now, Rutgers -1.5 right now. So the Scarlet Knights, the home favorite, I think that this is going to be a competitive game. Rutgers, after losing, I think it was 4 consecutive games, they've rattled off 2 consecutive victories. And the reason because of that is Ethan Kaliak-Manis is looking pretty solid right now as a quarterback in the absence of Kyle Monangai running the football. So, this is a very interesting matchup when I look at Illinois. We talked about last week for Aiden Childs, 5 sacks. Get pressure on Ethan Kaliak-Manis because it's been proven that if you can get heat on Ethan, he can make some bad decisions. So they need to be able to crowd the pocket. If Rutgers does decide to throw the football a little bit more in this game against Illinois. Remember earlier in the season when Illinois was very advantageous through the air in terms of taking the football away, create pressure, take the football away. When Rutgers does decide to throw the football, certainly. And this is a Rutgers defense where you can move the football on them, right? This is I think the main thing when we talk about the Scarlet Knights is they've kind of been decimated with injuries. Wesley Bailey is out for the year. We talked about Kyle Monangai there for a little bit. Muhammad Toure, right? That was right before the season started. Their top linebacker, he goes out. So it's been tough for them, but they've battled through. It's been very impressive the way Greg Schiano has been able to manage this team as this thing has kind of went along. So I think that's the key for Illinois, really start to I look at that Rutgers game against Nebraska. They really got in there and they really rattled him because of the pressure that they got on 16 in red and white. So they need to be able to do that. And then Illinois offensively, just play your game. Just play your game. I think Illinois can certainly move the ball and do some things offensively against the Scarlet Knights. So I think that this is going to be a very competitive game. Rutgers is feeling really good. Got to go on the road. Yeah, we had one that felt a little bit scary last week. This one's got maybe a little bit of a spooky feeling certainly as well. Illinois, in theory, I think should take care of business, but Rutgers is feeling certainly really confident. If I'm Illinois offensively, I think I want to hit some big plays to Pat Bryant. I think that is something that they can take advantage of over the top in this game.
Yeah, I know Rutgers was struggling a couple weeks back, but it sounds like they've figured things out over there. And anytime you go to Piscataway, you're in for a grueling Big Ten football type of game. And by the way, I will have Aaron Brightman on the show, the host of the Scarlet Faithful, one of my favorite people in the industry. He's been on my previous shows at Illini Cast. I've joined him on his show on occasion, so we'll have a full episode previewing that matchup later on this week. But Ted, what other games should we keep an eye on?
Oh, there's a top 5 matchup. If nobody heard, right? You got number 2 Ohio State. Does anybody know what time this game is going to be played? I hadn't heard. Oh, it's at noon. All right. We've got Ohio State. I think they will play 7 consecutive noon games. We'll see what happens here against the Indiana Hoosiers. Remember that Ohio State-Nebraska game earlier. That might be a little bit of a game plan of how Indiana can maybe slow down the Ohio State Buckeyes. But I will say this, Ohio State's offensive line has certainly gelled together since then. This is the true test, right? Everybody's talking about 11-1 Indiana. If they get boat raced by Ohio State, there's some rumblings out there that a 2-loss SEC team could leapfrog them. Personally, leaving an 11-1 Big Ten team out of the college football playoff seems like blasphemy to me. I don't foresee it happening, right? They're sitting at number 5 in the country. They would have to drop out of the top 10, certainly somewhere around that 11 or 12 range. Boy, dropping 6 or 7 spots after a loss to Ohio State. I think the only way that happens if it gets to like 56-7, similar to how Indiana beat Nebraska this season. But here's the thing about this game. You want to get a little bit of an inside track if you're Indiana, attack those corners. Look at what Oregon was able to do at times this season. When teams have had success against Ohio State, it's been attacking the outside. And then when you look at Indiana, when you look at Curtis Rourke, when you look at Elijah Surratt, when you look at Omar Cooper, when you look at some of these guys on the perimeter, I think this is the most difficult matchup for Ohio State since that Oregon matchup. They are going to be tested. If I'm Curt Cignetti, I'm looking for shots early and often in this game. I think it's going to be a little bit tough to run the football against this Ohio State front. So I want to be able to stretch them out early, see if I can hit a couple of big plays down the field, and then see if I'm going to be able to capitalize. Make no mistake about it. I think everybody's writing this in as an Ohio State victory. But make no mistake, this is going to be the biggest challenge for the Buckeyes since that Oregon game. This is going to be a significant challenge for Ohio State at the Horseshoe on Saturday afternoon. I can't wait for this game. I think maybe if I'm Ohio State, I want to get really methodical, right? I want Chip Kelly to really dial up a really good run scheme in this game, try to wear down Indiana's defense, and then hit some big plays early, keep that Indiana offense off the field. I feel like that's the key, certainly to victory. I think Ohio State on the perimeter, they've got a big advantage with Jeremiah Smith and Ibuka matched up against some of these corners. I know D'Angelo Pons is a really solid corner, but I just think the depth on the outside is better for Ohio State than it is in the secondary right now for Indiana. The spread, minus 13.5 for Ohio State. I'm going to have my preview and my pick on this later on, but my first glance at this, I'd probably go in Indiana cover right now. We'll at plus 13.5. We'll see where that line certainly drifts to as we get closer to Saturday. But maybe Vegas kind of tempting some people there with that Indiana plus 13.5 right now. So obviously that's kind of one that certainly stands out. Penn State at Minnesota. The last time the Nittany Lions traveled to Minneapolis, it was the Antoine Winfield show back there, the safety for Minnesota, who's now playing in the National Football League, had a big game when Minnesota knocked off Penn State. That was back in that magical 2019 season for the Golden Gophers. It's going to be a little bit chilly here this weekend. This is an interesting matchup. Okay, if Minnesota, right, would not have lost to Rutgers, this might be a ranked versus ranked matchup. But look, don't let that kind of loss to Rutgers kind of now really take you down with Minnesota and say, well, maybe this isn't the game that it was going to be. Minnesota, prior to that Rutgers game, was playing really good football, right? Max Brosmer was playing better ball. Darius Taylor was doing his thing. The defense was certainly doing their thing in this game. This is going to be a challenge, certainly, for Minnesota. We talk about spreads. Penn State minus 12.5. Would not surprise me to see Minnesota cover this spread. Penn State has Maryland next week, but I think that this is going to really tell us. Okay, Penn State dominated Washington in the whiteout. We talk about what has happened to the Nittany Lions since that loss to Ohio State. I think this game is really going to tell us what direction Penn State is going in. Minnesota has a pretty good secondary back there. Will Penn State, have they improved enough in the throw game that they can do well in that regard against this Minnesota secondary? I think that's the big time question. Like, if Penn State goes in there and they cover comfortably and they win by 17 to 20 points, I think this is a Penn State team that's certainly trending in the right direction. This is a team right now, ever since that Ohio State loss at the beginning of the month, they want to really regroup and say, we want to now be the hottest team going into the college football playoff at 11-1. So a good chance for them to reset and certainly remain impressive. Wisconsin and Nebraska sit there, both teams at 5-5. Nebraska minus 2.5 right now. I think that this is a coin flip. USC and UCLA, I think the loser goes home for the holidays, certainly as well in the battle for the victory bell. That one at the Rose Bowl. Big Ten After Dark, USC minus 4.5 right now.
Ted, let us know what's going on at the Big Ten Ted YouTube channel.
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff, fun stuff going on. Of course, we're going to be previewing and picking that Indiana-Ohio State matchup as well. Penn State, Minnesota, USC, UCLA on the docket for the ones going to have my picks coming up on Friday. If you missed it today, I talked about Kurt Cignetti's extension, Phil Longo getting fired, and USC. You know, they have one 5-star quarterback decommit, and they just get another one that gets better. So I talked about the USC quarterback of the future situation as well. So check all of that out. You know, the last couple of weeks, you know, was working out in Green Bay, went up to the North Woods of Minnesota, but now I am dialed in, baby. I am mentally refreshed. I am ready to go. It is a sprint to the finish, and I cannot wait to see how it all shakes out.
Best in the world, Ted. We'll see you next week.
All right. Sounds good.
And that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Locked On Illini. Please, on your way out, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. 62.1% of you watching this are just watching this without being subscribed. Just do a quick check. Make sure you hit that subscription, hit that like button, you know, on your way out. I really appreciate it. It costs you guys nothing, but it really does continue to help this channel grow as we march to the magic number of 1,600. Let's get to 1,600 by next week. We're going to have content for you every single day, as we always do on this channel. Half hour of Illinois content. We're going to be previewing the Alabama game. We're going to be previewing the Rutgers game. All Illini, all the time, right here on Locked On Illini. Until next time, ILL. Love you guys.